this evening, Breath and the Bodhisattva Way. It's a nice generic title, so I could actually get to talk about just about anything. Let's first talk about the breath, because that's so often what we begin and end our intention when we're meditating. We begin with the breath, we return to the breath over and over again, and the breath is always flowing along, whether we're aware of it or not, round the clock. From the first breath we take at our birth to the last breath we exhale at our demise. Breath, inspiration on the in-breath, expiration on the out-breath, receiving on the in-breath, giving on the out-breath. It's really useful to think about the in-breath as inspiration. Because one of the things about practice, even though there's nothing much to get, is that when we live a life of practice, we can really notice that we become more inspired in our life. When we're really open and relaxed, it's really more likely that we are going to receive inspiration from the smallest items that come along, the smallest moments, the smallest hints, the unexpecteds. So breathing in is the source of inspiration, and breathing out is the breath of offering, the generosity of all life. We exchange continually breath with all beings. And it's a wonderful practice when walking in the forest to really tune into the exchange, the wonderful generosity and exchange that's going on between us and the forest, the trees and the human, intimately exchanging and supporting each breath. We don't use the breath in meditation as it's not a duty. The breath in meditation is infinitely rich and interesting, because we don't generally tend to think about the breath that way. We might not realize that when we're sitting, if we're sitting to get something, or we think we're trying to get to some state of mind or some specific experience, then we're not actually really allowing the breath, allowing for inspiration. There's no room for it because we're too full of our own agenda. So watching the breath flow in without interfering with it, without trying to make it be a certain kind of breath or certain quality breath, watching it flow out without it having to be a certain number of beats. You know, there are lots of instructions about breath practice, and some of them say, breathe in for 6, breathe in for 3, breathe out for 6. That's not what we're doing in Zazen. We're just breathing the natural breath and living the natural mind and the natural heart. And so breath, inspiration and expiration. Breathing it in, breathing it out. It's a kind of dance. So please don't miss the opportunity to just be putting aside a certain amount of time every day just to breathe, to appreciate the perfection of the breath, the pleasure of the breath. And the blessing of the breath. So actually, the thing that got me started on giving this Dharma talk in this way was something that one of you said to me recently, which really took me by surprise, which was that they didn't realize that that the opportunity from practice is to offer everything in our life, to offer everything in our life. If we, and they brought up the word bodhicitta, which we don't use so much in Zen. That is more a word that's used a lot in the Tibetan practices, bodhicitta, but it is absolutely applicable. What it means is enlightenment mind, or Buddha mind, the mind of Buddha. And Buddha is the completion. It's completeness, and it is our natural, it is our nature. We are completely complete. But we may not realize it. Most of us don't, and that's where we struggle. That's the not realizing it is the realm of samsara, the realm of feeling incomplete, like something is missing. So the aspiration to awaken, to attain enlightenment, motivated by compassion for all the suffering beings, all the sentient beings, comes with a falling away of attachment to some sense of separation. We are not separate from all of life. When we awaken to our own dissatisfaction and difficulties, and we get so simple that we can simply sit and breathe and be present, we notice not only our own suffering states, but they are shared, they're universal. The motivation initially in practice can be to liberate ourselves from our own suffering, to be free of it, to be more at ease, to be more at peace, to be more flexible. And that comes. But then what do we do when we're more at ease? When we see through all of the things that we were clinging to, all that is left is to bring the same release to all who are suffering, who are still caught up. So we can say, what can I do to help relieve others' suffering? This is moving into the, first we practice for the self, and then we practice for the Sangha, for all beings, and then we practice for the Dharma. But practicing for all beings changes the way we live our life, because it unfolds moment by moment, and there are always ways to be of service. Always ways to be of service. So this brings to mind, I was looking at a YouTube thing on bodhicitta, and the person who was talking about bodhicitta said that bodhicitta arises spontaneously when we realize directly the mind ground. It's not a concept, but it's a direct experience. of the mind, the phrase mind ground. Maybe we should do away with that phrase because it sounds so mysterious. When we experience directly, intimately, just this, whatever it is, where the voices are stopped, where the sense of separation is no more. There's a wholeness, there's a completeness. We call that in Zen Kensho. And I once asked, years ago, I asked Hogan if he had ever had Kensho. And he said, "Oh, I have Kensho all the time." And what he was referring to there was he lit just the moments of intimacy that are so sweet and wide open, where there is no self separate from. We can call them peak experiences. But even peak experiences can misrepresent the quality. I mean, sometimes when you have a really big peak experience, okay, everything goes away, all is one, and not even one, right? Those are the big wow experiences. But actually, if you engage in any kind of task, and you just are really one with it, you can have a sense of deep fulfillment that you don't even think about until it kind of passes and you get on to the usual mind chatter. And then you realize, oh yes, peace. So the Bodhisattva Way, the way of the Bodhisattva, emerges from this experience of peace and completeness. And when you are really at peace, there's nothing that you would rather do but contribute to others' well-being. Compassion, the ability to see past shallow appearances and see true suffering and need. So I want to talk about compassion because so often, so much is talked about with that now, and we can really think about compassion as an emotion, kind of like sympathy. But that's a very small portion of compassion. Compassion is much more difficult than that. It's much more difficult, much more demanding. Dalai Lama says compassion is a blend of empathy and reason. So compassion is not simply the emotional feeling of, but it is infused with the propellant to act on behalf of, to bring forward whoever is suffering into a sense of completeness and peace and ease. Not simply caring for others or cultivating sympathy for a select few. So that's another part of compassion, is it's not just having compassion for everybody but President Trump. If we are going to, that's just an example, I, like many people, have a hard time extending it, and yet it's very important to keep going as deep as we need to in our own reactivity to say, why not include everybody, even the most destructive actors in the world? Because compassion, there are no limits to it. it is a limitless, it's limitless, it's boundless, it's uncomfortable, it's difficult. I thought about, if you saw those pictures of the arrest of the demonstrators in Portland by the people in military gear, which completely inflamed my system when I saw that. All kinds of things, anger and fear and all kinds of stories, and came up. And I thought, yeah, what is it like to be the person being arrested? What is it like to be the person arresting? What is that experience? And it's really important to be able to step into every role with an openness and an understanding that we all come from limited view and enact it. There's no limit to who gets swept into our compassion, not just people. I know Seda was talking about what happened for her when the neighbors across the street who needed to cut their timber because they needed the money. That was their only income. And the profound pain that Seda experienced at the felling of the trees. And all of the animals that live in the trees. You know, every which way there was suffering. Every which way. So one thing about compassion is it's really vast. No exceptions. In one of the streams of teaching called the Yamaka teachings, they liken compassion to, or the feeling of true compassion to a tearful person who sees or remembers that his or her only child has fallen into a pit of fire. And I think of that now when members of our Sangha just are struggling so much with the deep grief for the world. And yet, you know, another part of this is the Buddha said that we must grow beyond grief for the world. But what he was referring to there was not stealing our hearts and not really being able to feel for those who are deeply suffering and very caught in suffering. But he was pointing out that when we just get caught in our own grief, we are not helpful. So we need to be big enough in our awareness, in our practice, in our motivation, in our compassion, to be able to put aside our own grief, to be able to act effectively on behalf of those who are caught. To continue to be motivated and stay awake for the sake of all beings who have fallen into the pit of fire. So how do we, as in our Bodhisattva activity, which is really activity that's not motivated by our own greed, our own need, our own agenda, but comes purely from, or comes from concern for other suffering. How do we, what do we do? What do we do? How do we do it? And we all look around for a grand gesture or an important public work, but probably everybody on this screen at the moment has our way already. We are already living a life of offering. So first of all, by being committed to and motivated to really understand our own forms of suffering and how it limits us and how it gets spewed onto others when it does. That's important. That's where we all begin. That's where we all return to, is maintaining awareness of our own fears, our own difficult states that we then act out. But we also, in being of service to others, even the small, we don't know the effect of what we do. And my mind is drawn back to a koan that we worked on Tuesday night recently, about Sujata, who was the story is told in different ways, but the version we used was she was the daughter of a very wealthy person and was married to someone who of her father's choosing, and she prayed to have this partner be somebody who really brought happiness to her, and she ended up with somebody who she was very happy with. So she would go to the tree where the goddess that she had prayed to hung out and give offerings of gratitude. And that's what she was doing. She was giving an offering. Sujata was giving an offering of rice milk in gratitude. And there happened to be this really grizzled, terribly wizened person sitting, meditating under the tree, who looked like he was close to death. So she offered that person. And it turned out this is the Buddha. This is the story of the Buddha. She's the woman who came along and offered him this one simple meal. That wasn't even her intention. She was involved in offering gratitude. But look at the import of that activity. And I love that story, because that's true all the time. We don't know what our actions are going to, what kind of effect they're going to have. All the more reason to cultivate bodhicitta, to cultivate our intention, to awaken, to be fully present, to be open, so that is the state from which our actions stem. And even the simplest action can have huge consequences in ways that we don't even know. So we look at what we have choices about, and then everything else is just how it comes forward in the world, how it mixes with conditions, causes and conditions. No matter how small or large the offering, our offerings are always beyond measure. We cannot measure. We can't know the span of the effect of our life. And this is true too when we serve each other and we serve the Sangha, but we also serve many people who don't have a practice. And it can be the inspiration for their practice. It can kind of light up the possibility that, oh yes, it's possible to be a person who is lovely to be around. It can inspire somebody to begin to cultivate that in themselves. Because the greatest gift, according to the Buddha, is the gift of the Dharma. And so that is always part of any gift that we give. We give it in so many ways. I'm seeing one of our the visage of one of our Sangha members right now, who's a musician. And when we offer music, when we play music, it's pure Dharma. That's pure Dharma. It has pure, direct, open effect to bring joy, to spark joy in those who hear it. When we cook a meal, we're not only nourishing the body, we're nourishing the spirit. When we're baking delicious baked goods, we're sparking joy. When we're petting the cat, we're soothing a fellow being in a way that that's not dependent on language. Anyway, that's all I have to say, except that it's so important to recognize that everything we do, we can dedicate. Everything we do, we can dedicate to benefit everyone. Even when we're having a hard time, and I have used this practice for a long time, even when I'm having a hard time, I dedicate it to all those who are having a hard time at this moment. May we all be free. May we all find peace. Even when we have scary thoughts of apocalypse, may we all emerge from this fearful state of mind, inspired to take action that will lead us toward love and community. So we can, it's such a beautiful practice to dedicate everything we do to the well-being of all. Even, another one is, and some of you have heard me say this, when you can't sleep. I happen to be a very good sleeper, so it's not a common problem, but there are nights when I cannot sleep. And what I do is I just lie there and I dedicate my awakeness and my wish I always begin with the children in the world, and I picture different places in the world and the children at that moment. May they be safe. May they have food to eat and a lap to sit on. And that's a lovely way to spend a sleepless night. And actually, they don't usually last because it's very soothing. So these are just a few thoughts I have about how to live with the intention to benefit all beings, to cultivate compassion, and to dedicate our life to benefit, to be of benefit. Not just in our grand gestures, but in every way that we are. It's a really good thing to do when you don't know what else to do. I dedicate this moment of being at profound loose ends to finding the path, to being able to take up the path again. May we all do that together and support each other's efforts in that regard.